Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. This is a video documentary for the Islamic economic ideas in the second phase and its approach towards sustainable economic growth. The second phase of the development of economic thoughts in Islam started with a rich intellectual heritage upon which the scholars of this period were able to draw, besides being inspired directly by the Quran and Sunnah. At the same time, they faced a political reality by the disintegration of the Central Abbasid rule and the division of the Islamic realm into regional powers, largely based on the force rather than the people's consent. Corruption at high places increases accompanied by a moral decline in the community level. With the decaying moral fabric of the society, the gap between the rich and the poor was also increasing. It was nevertheless an age of prosperity in which the vastness of the Islamic realms afforded wide scope for trade and commerce. And apart from the numerous taxes one had to pay, there were little curbs on economic enterprise. The idea of sustainable economic growth refers to economic and sustainable development that meets the needs of the present generation without undermining the ability of future generation in order to satisfy their own needs. In other words, it is to handle these resources in a way that they may stay available for future generations. There are three key features of sustainable growth, which are: first, keeping the long run rate of economic growth; second, attaining intergenerational fairness in the use of natural resources; and third, limiting as a ways as possible the increase in pollution for maintaining the quality of environment. The field of sustainable development can be broken into three parts, which are environmental sustainability, economic sustainability, and socio-political sustainability. In our documentary, we focus on economic sustainability and relate the ideas from the main figures from the second phase, which are Al-Ghazali, Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Khaldun, and al-Makrizi. Meanwhile, ideas from two Islamic contemporary scholars, Mohamed Siddiqui and Said Nawab Haider Naqvi, were included to discuss the contemporary issue and relate with the sustainable economic growth.
Ibn Khaldun was a well-known Islamic historian and thinker related to sociology, politics, economics, and education. His work, Al-Muqaddimah, is recognized as a masterpiece by scholars and is a source of research and reference to this day. The contributions of Ibn Khaldun's thought in economics is contained in his great work, Al-Muqaddimah, where he has discussed the theory of economics. He has preceded the economic theories sparked by Western scholars such as Adam Smith, Marx, Alfred Marshall, Malthus, and so on. Ibn Khaldun preceded them centuries before it was officially established in the Western world. For example, the theory of divisions of labor in production activities has similarities with the theory of Adam Smith, fathers of modern economics, through his book, The Wealth of Nations. Capitalism is an economic and social system that tends towards the accumulation of wealth by individuals without government interference and with the aim of profit. Adam Smith, through his book published in 1776 entitled An Inquiry the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of the Nations, which wanted everyone to be given the freedom to work and strive in perfect competitions by eliminating a government intervention. One of the big issues is capitalism can lead to monopoly abuse. In the free market, successful firms can acquire monopoly power. This allows them to charge higher prices to consumers. Although Ibn Khaldun put forward the theory of the free market system, he acknowledged the need for the government to monitor the market through the institutions of al-Hisbah. These institutions function to monitor the market in the form of conducting investigations into misconduct such as monopoly abuse and implementing appropriate punishment. Al-Muhtasib also monitor the operations or movement of the market, preventing fraud in measurements and scales. The next issue is that the system of capitalism promotes the nature of greed, or better known as materialism. The nature of capitalism is to reward profit. The capitalist system can create incentive for firms to pursue profit rather than decisions to maximize social welfare. For example, firms use price discrimination theory to charge higher price to consumers who want to jump the queue. This makes sense from the perspective of maximizing profit. These kinds of systems is able to erode social norms and a sense of fair play. This system is also very clear that oppressions will happen to the poor due to the occurrence of injustice in the global community. This can be mitigated through some economic principles and philosophies from Ibn Khaldun, such as justice, diligence, cooperation, moderation, and equality. In relation to justice, Ibn Khaldun has emphasized that justice is the backbone and foundations of strength in an economy. When justice cannot be done, a country will crumble and be destroyed. In the philosophy applied by al-Maqdisi, he was very concerned about the welfare of the labor force in the market. The tax imposed on them should be based on their ability so that it does not burden them. This is because they are the one who produce the demand productions of goods in the market. Without them, who can we expect to produce food resources for society? This is in contrast to the stream of feudalism. Feudalism is a form of social and political organization based on the relationship of the protectorate between the slave and the feudal lords. The economy in feudal times was based on subsistence, agriculture, and livestock. The economy is autarky, so there is almost no trade and that is done mainly through exchange. The source of wealth was the ownership of land, which was in the hand of feudal lords. Manual workers fell to slaves, who worked the land and paid homage to feudal lords. Feudalism does not treat people equally or let them rise in society. A person born as a slave should remain a slave, just as a person born a lord gets special treatment without obtaining it. Most farmers are slaves, and they were forbidden from leaving their lord's land. Slaves were required to work 3 or 4 days each week in exchange for lords permitting them to farm on another day. Slaves were limited in their movement and activities every day since they were unable to leave the land without permission.
Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali writings existed even before many famous classical economists by Europeans. Al-Ghazali's views on accumulating wealth and earning profit were considered pedestrian. It was not his main concern, even though it is prohibited or even though it is not prohibited or discouraged in Islam to accumulate wealth or earning. Al-Ghazali sees that humanity's main goal is only to be judged by God, and our main purpose is to achieve God's pleasure. Al-Ghazali focused much on Sharia and Islamic social welfare in his writing. For instance, he focused on the objectives of Sharia, which elaborated on the preservation of religion, life, intellect, lineage, and wealth. Also, he emphasized on the individual and social needs and makes this distinction in essentials, comforts, and luxuries. There were no specific writings from Al-Ghazali regarding the contemporary concepts of market demand and supply, but his understanding is adept on the influence that the concept of demand and supply had towards the market and trade sector. In regards with Ibn Taymiyyah, he focused on the imperfections of the market, which led to injustice in economic practices. Al-Ghazali's viewpoint is limited on the technicality of demand and supply, but more attentive towards human nature. He believes that ethics and morals from the Islamic point of view is a guide for human to follow in the pursuit of economic activities. Al-Ghazali encourages the idea of cooperation for production-related activities. Al-Ghazali contends that social obligation is a big part of an industrial duty, as it is some sort of religious act or religious deed, and materialistic gain is considered to be a secondary factor. Public finances were also discussed by Al-Ghazali, which later on he differentiated between Sharia and other Sharia-related revenues. When he would apply levies by Sharia mandates, he accepted extra taxes with specific conditions which are related to the social welfare of the society. Most of his decision making is for the betterment of the society. The famous ability to pay and benefit type of taxation was also supported by Al-Ghazali, as it helps the community because the ability to pay allows people who cannot afford to pay taxes to be exempted from paying taxes. And the benefit principle is for those who pay the taxes, they can get what they have paid. That means it is worth it for them to pay the taxes because they will get back from the benefit by paying the taxes. Al-Ghazali's works bore results. Many of his work-related activities heeding the need of the society. His work is Many of his work, including the founding of some economic concept that made it through the modern economic textbook, like Islamic scholars, including Al-Ghazali, what is cause of the emergence of. Al-Ghazali left behind a lifetime of knowledge on economic thought, especially for the economics related to Islamic disciplines and social welfare. Taqiyuddin Ahmad bin Abdul Halim, or famously known as Ibn Taymiyyah, is an accomplished economist. He presented much on the concept of perfect market that conforms with ethics and moral of Islam. His ideas are based on personal property and free enterprise that follow suit with Sharia law and Islamic ethical conduct for the society. There are some economic thought that Ibn Taymiyyah have give opinion on. It is idea of fair prices and market mechanism, to name a few. Other than that, Ibn Taymiyyah realizes that traders are motivated by profit. So, even though traders are motivated by profit, he believes that as long as the benefit does not damage the interests of traders or the customers, the trader deserves to receive such benefit. Ibn Taymiyyah sees fairness for traders as goods and services that are not sold by force, which may prevent profit. His implementation of Islamic economics is roughly the same with Imam al-Ghazali, which plans to apply Islamic morals and ethics into economic activities. Morals of Islam are a significant factor to have a stable economy because activities are related with human behavior, especially economic activity. So, this is why Ibn Taymiyyah sees moral as a key for managing the economy. If the economy does not follow Islamic law or morals, it would be chaos. Islam encourages us to be fair to ourselves and other people. Since Islam is highlighted the significance of justice in our life, it shows that Islam covers the principle of justice in the form of political, economic, and social aspects of life.
It is undeniable to say that the development of Islamic economic system till the contemporary time has gone through many changes and improvement. However, it is still far from perfect. This could be seen from the corruption, injustice, and unequal wealth distribution that still happen in the society. In Islamic economic studies, one of the features that are frequently highlighted by both early and contemporary scholars is the role and responsibility held by the government or state in the economy. Economy, politics, and social affairs are interrelated and linked with each other, as one going through any changes and others would surely be affected. It is because the government has the authority to make a change policy for the improvement of a country's economies, which will then surely affect the behavior of the society related to their decision making in consumption. Mohamed is one of the Islamic economic contributors during the 1950s. His studies have become
one of the reference to the Islamic economic thoughts in contemporary time. In his work, he integrated Western and Islamic knowledge together but avoided using Western tools to analyze, such as neoclassical view, and stick to the Islamic principle. He focuses he focused for decades to study money and the banking system. According to him, there is a need for the market system to work on its own, but does not oppose the state intervention on it. In the situation where the market fails to gain equilibrium and leads to injustice, it is the state's responsibility to solve and fix the matter. Despite that, he emphasized that this reason does not mean that it is equal to what is in the socialist system. It needs to be highlighted that the purpose of the state intervention is to protect the social benefit according to Sharia, while acknowledging the method of private ownership. Siddiqui also mentioned that the need of an individual would be attained by their effort. In a situation where they are unable to fulfill their needs by themselves, whether it is contemporary or permanently, their relative or people living in the neighborhood should take action to help them. However, there are worse situations where they have neither relative or neighbors to help them, such as being homeless. This is where the state should shoulder the responsibility to help them. This is in line with the argument of Ibn Taymiyyah, where a man is obligated to be independent and work hard to gain wealth, and the state will provide help when the obligation could not be fulfilled. He then continued that the role of government should not be fixed on only putting on policy related to the minimum wage and such, but also need to assist them fully until they could manage their living by themselves. This could be seen when one encounters a misfortune such as a natural disaster or pandemic. Many people get badly affected and cannot continue their daily life like they used to. For example, on the after effect of the COVID-19 pandemic, when many people lose their job and have no income, giving out funds undeniably could help them, but only for a while. It is good during the early stage, but if it goes for a long period, it will only lead to another problem. Instead, the government should focus on the main problem of having no proper job. From there, they should provide more job opportunities or assist them in getting into businesses, and this should be supervised until they could get back on right track. Another contemporary Islamic scholar, Said Nawab Haider Naqvi, suggested that other than fulfilling the people's need, the state should also focus on protecting social justice by achieving welfare equity among the society. The gap between richer and poorer exists from decades ago and still exists until now despite the prevention taken by the authority. This is an argument regarding the real meaning of equal wealth, whether every person should receive the same level of income or it should depend on other factors. Naqvi argued that welfare equity should not only mean a balanced distribution of wealth but also in total consumption. For example, in a situation where a single man receives a monthly salary of 3,000 compared to a married man that have a wife and few children that also receive a salary of 3,000 monthly, that amount may be enough to support the necessity for a person, but it does not mean it would be the same for a whole family. Due to that, Naqvi proposed to decrease the level of high-income groups and assist to increase the wealth of lower-income groups. From above, it could be seen that the role of government is very crucial in maintaining the welfare of society. Even though it is a second solution of the fulfillment of one necessity, it is a responsibility of the person itself. It's like working behind the scene and letting the market function on its own. Any changes made by the government usually give a broader effect. To fix one problem, it might lead to a new problem. Other than that, it also consumes a huge cost to implement it. The funds mostly come from the tax collection, as the government should not involve themselves in businesses to gain their profit. According to Ibn Khaldun, it can become a disadvantage to the investor and private sector. It is to avoid the government from abusing the authority they have for personal gain. Generally, the matter of government rule is hardly discussed, as the government should focus more on inventing better economic instruments They overlook the fact that the government itself can be corrupted. For example, in Nakubi's views, even though he accepts the fact that man has a responsibility of being greedy and exploit others' rights, he did not highlight the same thing that could happen to the states too. Technically, the state also consists of Islamic men. Therefore, if Islamic men could stay straight away from their responsibility, whether intentionally or not, the same agreement should also be applied to the state's intervention. This could be seen in what happened in Colombia nowadays. Despite the huge amount of tax collected, poverty still could not be prevented, and the government even took the initiative to borrow from the World Bank, which put them involved in a debt that has an interest. This loophole should not be turned a deaf ear. The government should become a place where people could depend on in their situation, not the one that puts the burden on people.
Another important issue that can be highlighted in this video is the underdevelopment in Muslim countries. We have three indicators of development, which are economic growth, increases in per capita income, and attainment of a standard of living comparable to that of industrialized countries. I quote Dr. Rifai in his paper, Muslim Countries and the Underdevelopment and Islamic Perspective, Why Cannot Muslims Revisit Their Golden Ages in Sciences and Technology? One of the important reasons is the backwardness and stagnation of Muslims in education, innovation, and development. Recent reports on Human Development Index is released in 2015 by UNDP indicates that only 5 Muslim countries are included among those 49 countries for very high human development. Education is very important because it is one of the measurements that can raise the standard of living of a household. As a solution, Dr. Rifai suggested that Arab and Muslim countries must invest a greater portion of its national budget on education. Although it has seemed to be invested a lot on education, yet all statistics tell us that these countries spend less money on education than any other non-Muslim countries in Asia. Above all, parental encouragement and motivation are very much important to educate children. Education is a cooperative enterprise between schools, parents, teachers, and children. Unless all the stakeholders contribute positively, these countries would not be able to make much progress in education. Without good education, Arab and Muslim countries would not be able to achieve any milestone in development and progress. Education and development are intertwined in the digital world, so these countries do not have any other alternative except to improve the quality of education in their countries to come out of these pathetic conditions. Furthermore, the discussion of past literatures of development emphasizes on Ibn Khaldun's model. Ibn Khaldun is one of the greatest scholars who contributed to the Islamic economic thought in the second phase of development. Chapra 2008 presented Ibn Khaldun's theory of development that derived from Kitab Muqaddimah in his paper. Ibn Khaldun proposed 8 wise principles, the Kalimat Hikamiyah of political wisdom. It is multidisciplinary because it links all important socio-economic and political variables, including the sovereign or political authority as G, beliefs and rules of behavior or the Sharia as S, people as N, wealth or stock of resources as W. Initial G and J indicates development and justice respectively, in a circular and interdependent manner, each influencing the others and in turn being influenced by them. The model was then reinterpreted by Mohamed 2010 into a simpler manner. The model can be simplified into 4 components, which are a collective authority represented by state institutions and the rule of law, the people, wealth and development, lastly, justice and moral legitimacy. A conventional scholar, Lewis, 1995, stressed that while some religious codes are more conducive to economic growth than others, others are not. If a religion places a premium on material values, work, thrift and productive investment, honesty in commercial relations, experimentation and risk-taking, and equality of opportunity, it will promote growth. If it places a premium on the opposite, it will tend to retard growth. If these are implemented in Muslim countries, surely we can climb to a desired economic growth. The Sustainable Development Goals promote Goal 8, decent work and economic growth. We can combat the issue of underdevelopment in Muslim countries and achieve sustainable economic growth if the government plays their role significantly. The government can increase the standard of living by improving and reconstructing education, healthcare, and infrastructure industries. It will help the Human Development Index (HDI) to increase too. Hence, we can have a good economic system with a nice combination of ideas from all Muslim scholars, and it can be implemented in countries that have not used Islamic economics. All of these connections will lead to a long-term economic prosperity.